The street corner. Nobody noticed that it was a quiet afternoon in downtown Los Angeles. The kind of day where people rush past each other, eyes on their phones, minds on deadlines, barely aware of the world around them. The sky hung low with soft gray clouds, and a gentle breeze whispered through the narrow streets lined with aging brick buildings and cafes. At the edge of a busy intersection, an elderly woman stood still. Her name was Mrs. Elaine Porter. She was 84 years old, small in frame, but with eyes that once held a spark of life. Today, however, she looked tired. Her thin arms struggled to hold to large paper bags filled with groceries. The handles dug into her skin, and she trembled slightly as she tried to adjust her grip. Her back was curved with age, her coat too big for her frail body, and her shoes worn down to the soles. Cars passed by. People walked around her. Some glanced, but most didn't stop. It wasn't that they were cruel. They were just busy, distracted, in a hurry to be somewhere else. Elaine took a deep breath. She knew she had a few more blocks to walk. Normally, her neighbor helped her, but today he was away. She couldn't afford a cab. Her small pension barely covered rent and medicine. This grocery trip was necessary. She had run out of food 2 days ago and had been living off toast and tea. As she took one step forward, her right knee buckled. The weight of the bags became too much. One slipped from her grasp and fell to the ground, sending apples rolling onto the pavement. She gasped, looking helplessly at the mess. A passerby almost stepped on one of the apples, but swerved at the last second and kept walking. Nobody offered to help. A soft sigh escaped her lips. For a moment, her heart sank, not because of the groceries, but because she felt invisible. But then, something shifted. From across the street, a man in a dark hoodie and jeans noticed her. He wasn't in a rush. In fact, he was walking slowly, enjoying a cup of coffee. His hair was shoulder length, slightly messy, and his beard looked like it hadn't been trimmed in weeks. He moved with ease, like someone who was comfortable in his own skin. He crossed the street, eyes focused on Elaine. He bent down and picked up the apples, carefully placing them back in the bag. Then he gently lifted the fallen grocery sack and turned to her with a soft smile. "May I carry these for you?" he asked kindly. Elaine blinked, surprised. She looked up at the man and squinted. Something about his voice was familiar. So was his face, but she was too flustered to place it. I don't want to trouble you," she whispered. "No trouble at all," he said. "Let me walk with you." She hesitated, then nodded. And so they walked. She held one bag. He carried the other. They moved slowly down the sidewalk, and people passing by started to glance over, not because of her, but because of him. Some even stopped in their tracks. That was when Elaine realized who he was. It was Keanu Reeves, the movie star, the action hero, the man from all those films. She had seen him years ago in a film with her late husband. They had loved that movie. She had never imagined she'd meet him like this, on an ordinary afternoon, helping her carry groceries. You're Keanu Reeves," she said softly. He smiled shyly. "Guilty." Elaine chuckled. It was a light, warm sound that hadn't left her lips in weeks. What are you doing here?" she asked. "Just walking," he replied. "Thinking. Sometimes it's nice to disappear for a while." They reached her apartment building. It was old and small, with chipped paint and a cracked staircase. She lived on the second floor. He offered to carry the bags all the way up. She didn't argue. Inside, her home was neat but modest. Old photographs lined the shelves. There was a faded picture of her and her husband on their wedding day. A calendar with handwritten notes. The smell of lavender and old wood filled the air. He placed the groceries on the kitchen counter. She offered him tea, and he accepted. They sat at the table, two strangers, now connected by a moment of kindness. "You didn't have to help me," she said after a while. "I wanted to," he replied. "You look like you needed someone." Her eyes filled with tears, not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Gently, sincerely, like he truly cared. "People don't usually see me," she whispered. "They walk past. They forget I exist." "I saw you," he said, "and I'm glad I did." They sat in silence for a while, sipping tea. Outside, The city moved on. Cars honked. Footsteps echoed. But inside that small apartment, time felt. Still, what Elaine didn't know was that this one act of kindness would start a ripple effect. One small moment that would change not only her life, but many others. Because Keanu Reeves hadn't just helped her carry groceries. He had helped her feel seen. And soon, the world would hear about it. Whispers in the wind. Next morning, Elaine woke up with a strange feeling in her chest. It was a kind of warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. Like hope, like something good had touched her small, quiet world. She had barely slept the night before, replaying the moment over and over. Again, Keanu Reeves, in her kitchen, sipping tea, laughing gently at her jokes, treating her like an old friend. She smiled to herself as she made breakfast. Her apartment was still quiet, but it didn't feel lonely, somehow. His kindness had left behind something invisible, something comforting. She hummed softly as she stirred her oatmeal, the tune from a lullaby her mother used to sing. Meanwhile, down the street, a young woman named Mia worked at the local coffee shop. She was 23, with dreams bigger than her small-town life. She had seen Keanu Reeves walk by yesterday. At first, she thought she was imagining it. Celebrities didn't just stroll past coffee shops in this neighborhood. But then she saw him helping the old woman, carrying her groceries, walking with her slowly and carefully. Like it mattered. Mia had taken a quick photo, unsure if she should. She wasn't trying to invade privacy, it just felt like a rare, real moment. She had posted it later on her private social media page, with a simple caption, "He didn't do it for attention. He didn't even know anyone was watching." By noon, her friend had shared it, and then another. By evening, it had been shared thousands of times. On the second day, it went viral. Every major platform started talking about it. Actor Keanu Reeves spotted helping elderly woman with groceries. No security, no cameras, just kindness. Headlines like that flooded the internet. Most didn't know who the woman was. Some didn't even believe it was real, but the photo didn't lie. There was something gentle in the way he held the bag, something honest in the way he looked at her. Elaine, of course, had no idea. She didn't use the internet. Her phone was old and rarely rang. To her, the moment had ended with a cup of tea and a smile. She didn't know the world was starting to notice. Keanu did. He saw the photo 2 days later. While walking through a bookstore, a young fan had run up to him, showing it on her phone. He had smiled quietly and thanked her, but inside, something stirred. He hadn't helped Elaine because he wanted attention. He hadn't even thought anyone would notice. He was used to the cameras when working. But off-screen, he preferred to disappear, to walk quietly, to think, to heal. Still, something about this moment stayed with him. That night, Keanu sat alone in his apartment, looking at the photo online, not because it showed him, but because it captured something he hadn't seen in himself for a long time: peace. His life had been full of pain, losses he never talked about, heartbreaks he had carried alone. Fame never protected him from grief, but helping Elaine had reminded him of something simple. Being human meant being there for one another. He decided to go back. Meanwhile, Elaine's neighbor, Tommy, had returned from his trip. Tommy was in his 40s, with rough hands and a kind heart. He worked long hours but always looked out for Elaine. When he heard what happened, he was stunned. "You had Keanu Reeves in your kitchen?" he asked, eyes wide. Elaine chuckled. "He's just a man, Tommy, a kind one. Do you know what people are saying online? You're famous now." She frowned. "Famous for what?" He showed her the photo. At first, she stared in silence. Then she shook her head slowly. "I didn't ask for this," she whispered. "You didn't need to. It's real, and people feel it." Elaine didn't know what to say. It felt strange, being seen by the world after feeling invisible for so long. But deep down, something about it made her sit up straighter. She mattered. Her story mattered. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned soft orange, there was a knock at her door. She opened it slowly. And there he was, Keanu Reeves, standing there, holding a small plant in a clay pot. "I brought you a friend," he said with a shy smile. Elaine's eyes welled with tears. "You came back, of course." He said gently, "May I come in?" She stepped aside, and he entered once more. They sat by the window. The plant rested on the sill. Keanu told her about the photo, about how people were reacting. She listened quietly, unsure how to feel. "It's strange," she said finally, "how something so small became something so big." "It wasn't small," Keanu said. "You were alone. You needed help, and you accepted it. That matters." "But why me?" she asked. "Why stop for me?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "Because I've been you. Not in years, not in age, but in feeling. Lost, invisible, needing someone." They sat in silence after that dot outside. Lights flickered on across the street. A boy chased his dog. A couple laughed. In the distance, and inside, two people sat in quiet understanding. Keanu stayed longer this time. He helped her put away groceries, listened to her stories, asked about her late husband. He laughed when she showed him an old photo of them dancing. He even danced with her, slowly, in the middle of her small living room, to music playing softly from her old radio dot. It wasn't about fame anymore. It wasn't about going viral. It was about connection, about being there when someone needs you. And what neither of them knew yet, what was quietly unfolding outside that apartment, was that this story, their story, was inspiring people across the world to do something simple. To stop, to look around, and to care. The ripple begins. 2 days passed, and life in the city moved on, but not quite the same. At a high school in a nearby neighborhood, a 15-year-old boy named Ricky watched the now viral video of Keanu Reeves helping Mrs. Elaine Porter. Someone had taken the original photo and added music, soft narration, and turned it into a short reel on social media. It showed the moment he bent down to help her, the way he walked beside her, and the gentle smile he gave when she offered him tea. Ricky didn't usually cry, not even when his dad left, but something about that video broke him open. He didn't know why. Maybe because his own grandma used to carry bags just like that. Maybe because he missed kindness. Or maybe because deep down, he wished someone had helped his mom when she was struggling to. So the next day, he walked with his head up instead of buried in his phone. And that same day, when he saw an old man on the bus, trying to carry a walker while balancing a bag, Ricky stood up, took the bag, and said, "Let me help." The old man looked shocked, then smiled. "Thank you, son. Thank you." And in that moment, the ripple grew. Back in Elaine's apartment, the sunlight streamed gently through the window as she sat on the couch, knitting a blue scarf. Keanu had come by again, this time bringing fresh flowers and 2 muffins from the bakery down the street. "You don't have to keep bringing me things," she said with a grin. "I know," he replied, "but I like seeing you smile." She laughed, shaking her head. Their friendship had become the most unexpected gift. They didn't talk about movies or fame. They talked about life, about little things, memories, regrets, dreams. He even told her about his sister, how she had once fought cancer, how hard it had been, how helpless he felt. Elaine listened, holding his hand gently when he grew quiet. "You know," she said, "sometimes the hardest thing is letting people in when you're hurting." He nodded. "I've been alone a long time. Not anymore," she said softly. The next morning, a news van parked outside Elaine's building. A reporter named Sarah knocked on her door with a microphone and a camera crew. She was kind, young, and nervous. "Mrs. Porter, I don't want to intrude," she said, "but the world wants to hear your side of the story." Elaine hesitated. She had never done interviews. She didn't like the idea of being a symbol. She was just a woman who had trouble carrying groceries. But when she looked at the young woman's eyes, she saw honesty. "All right," she said, "but only if you stay for tea." The interview aired that evening. Millions watched as Elaine, dressed in her simple sweater and gray hair tied back neatly, spoke into the camera with grace and quiet strength. "He didn't help me because he's famous," she said. "He helped me because he's kind. And I think the world needs more of that. Not just from actors, but from all of us." Her voice cracked a little, and she added, "I spent years thinking nobody saw me anymore. But now I know, even if it's just one person who sees you, it's enough." The clip was shared across every platform. Comments poured in. Some said she reminded them of their grandma. Others said they cried watching her speak. Many promised to be better, to look up, to help when they could. Celebrities began sharing it too. But more than that, ordinary people took action. In small towns and big cities, people started doing little things. A boy in Texas mowed his neighbor's lawn for free. A nurse in Ohio stayed after her shift to help an elderly patient call her daughter. A group of teenagers in Japan started helping seniors cross busy streets after school. All because one man saw one woman standing alone. Keanu watched it all from the quiet corner of a bookstore. Wearing sunglasses and a hoodie, he didn't want applause. He didn't want cameras. He just wanted to feel something real again. And he had. But there was something else growing inside him now. Something he hadn't felt in a long time. A sense of purpose. The next week, he knocked again on Elaine's door. This time, she greeted him with two scarves in her hands. One for you, she said. One for someone else. He laughed. You've been busy. Idle hands, she said. Plus, kindness is warmer than any heater. As they sat sipping tea, Elaine looked out the window and said softly, "You know, I used to feel like the world forgot about people like me. But now I wonder, maybe it just needed a reminder." Keanu nodded. "And you gave it one." "No," she said. "We did." But the story was far from over. A letter was on its way. A letter that would take this simple act of kindness and turn it into something even bigger. Something that would test Keanu's quiet life and give Elaine a chance to change lives far beyond her tiny apartment. The letter that changed everything. 3 days later, on a Thursday morning, Elaine found a crisp white envelope in her mailbox. There was no return address, just her name, written in careful handwriting. Curious, she carried it inside, placed it on the table, and opened it with trembling fingers. The letter inside was short, typed neatly, and written with respect. "Dear Mrs. Porter, my name is Ella Winston. I run a small non-profit foundation in Seattle that helps elderly citizens who live alone. I recently saw your story with Mr. Reeves and was moved to tears. We would be honored to partner with you and start a kindness initiative in your name. We're calling it the Porter Project. Our idea is simple: connect volunteers with seniors who need help with groceries, errands, or even just a conversation. Your story reminded the world what really matters, and now we want to make sure that moment lasts forever. Would you be willing to speak with us? With love and admiration, Ella Winston, founder, Silver Light Foundation." Elaine sat frozen for a moment, eyes fixed on the words. She had never been asked to start something before. She had lived most of her life following rules, making ends meet, being quiet. And now someone wanted to name a kindness project after her. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the phone. When Keanu came by later that afternoon, she handed him the letter. He read it twice, then looked up at her. "This is amazing," he said softly. "They want to turn your story into action." "Our story," she corrected. He smiled. "Are you going to do it?" She hesitated. "I want to, but I don't know how. I'm just an old woman with a cat and a kettle." "What can I do?" Keanu reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. "You can speak. You can be seen. And that's more than enough, too." Weeks later, Elaine sat in a small studio in Seattle. The Silver Light Foundation had flown her out and arranged everything. She had never been on a plane before. She clutched her knitting bag the whole flight, hands steady, but her heart racing. Keanu had come with her, quietly and without fanfare. He refused the offer of a fancy hotel and stayed in the same modest guest house as Elaine. The event was small, but heartfelt. Journalists, volunteers, donors, and seniors from around the country had come to listen. Ella introduced Elaine with warmth and admiration. Elaine stepped up to the microphone, her voice soft but clear. "I never thought anyone would listen to me," she began. "I never thought a simple trip to the grocery store would lead to this. But it did, not because of me, but because of kindness." She paused, eyes sweeping the room. "When Keanu carried my groceries, he carried more than food. He carried my dignity. He reminded me that I still mattered. And if this project can do that for even one more person, then it's all worth it." People stood, They clapped, some cried. Elaine's face flushed with emotion, and for the first time in years, she felt powerful, not in a loud way, but in the quiet way that changes things. Back in Los Angeles, something unexpected began to happen. Small community centers across the city started reaching out. Churches, libraries, schools. They all wanted to join the Porter Project. They wanted to match volunteers with seniors, create friendship circles, deliver groceries, build a network of small acts with big impact. One teacher started a classroom challenge where kids earn points by helping seniors in their neighborhoods. A tech company offered free app development to help organize volunteers. Even local businesses joined, offering discounts to anyone who showed their volunteer badge. And all of it traced back to one woman. And one walked down the sidewalk. But not everyone was happy. A well-known tabloid printed a story accusing Keanu of using Elaine's story for public attention. The article used blurry photos, half-truths, and cruel assumptions. The headline read, "Keanu Reeves' good deed, real or rehearsed." When Elaine read it, she was furious. Not because they questioned her friend, but because they didn't understand. How dare they? She said, slamming the paper down. Keanu shrugged it off. "I've had worse, but this time, it's different," she said. "They're not just attacking you. They're attacking what we're building." She called Ella. They agreed it was time to speak up, not to fight back, but to rise above it. They scheduled a live interview. This time, both Elaine and Keanu sat side by side. It aired on national TV. The host asked directly, "Mr. Reeves, was this just a public stunt?" Keanu looked into the camera with calm eyes and said quietly, "No cameras were there when I helped Elaine. No press, no plan. Just one person helping another. And now that kindness has grown into something real, I don't care what people think of me. I care what this story is doing for others." The host turned to Elaine. "What do you want the world to know?" She smiled gently. "I want them to know that being kind is not a performance. It's a choice. And we all have that choice every single day." The interview went viral within hours. The hashtag Porter Project began trending globally. Seniors from different countries started sending letters. Some from India, others from Ireland, Brazil, Japan, South Africa. People were inspired not just by the fame but by the heart. And through it all, Keanu stayed humble, quiet, helping where he could, sitting in the background while Elaine took the spotlight she had earned. But as the project grew, so did the pressure. Elaine started receiving bags of mail. Some were sweet, others were desperate people asking for help, sharing stories of loneliness, illness, and fear. She began staying up late, trying to answer each one by hand. Keanu noticed. "You don't have to do this alone," he said one evening, watching her rub her tired eyes. "But they wrote to me," she said. "I can't ignore them." "Then let's build something bigger," he said. And in that moment, an idea was born. An idea that would take the Porter Project from a grassroots effort to a movement that could change how society treated its elders forever. But they didn't. No, behind the scenes someone was watching. Someone with money. Someone with power. And not everyone wanted kindness to rise. Shadows behind the curtained Porter Project was growing faster than anyone expected. What began as one act of kindness had now spread across cities, countries, and cultures. Stories poured in, daily stories of teenagers reading books to the elderly, neighbors organizing care packages, children drawing cards for forgotten nursing homes. Elaine's single quotes, "S little living room," was no longer just a living space. It had become the heart of a movement. The coffee table held stacks of letters. Her walls were covered in pinned thank you notes from strangers. Volunteers came and went, helping her sort mail and organize calls. Keanu Reeves remained by her side through it all. He never made speeches, never asked for attention. He worked behind the scenes, quietly funding projects and making sure every community center had enough supplies, heaters for the cold, and food where it was missing. But as with all things that shined brightly, there were shadows gathering. In a boardroom high above the city, a man named Victor Harlan stared at a projector screen showing the Porter Project's global growth. He was the CEO of a massive elder care conglomerate. His company ran for-profit nursing homes and sold overpriced health services to seniors. Victor wasn't interested in kindness. He was interested in control. And the Porter Project was a problem. Too many seniors were choosing to stay at home now with volunteers helping them, meals being delivered for free, and neighbors checking in. Donations that used to go to his company's charity arms were being redirected to grassroots teams. Inspired by Elaine's story, Victor leaned back in his chair, his voice cold. "We need to shut this down, or own it." His legal team nodded. "They don't have a strong legal structure yet. They're still informal in some areas. We could challenge their use of donations, raise doubts, or we discredit them." Victor said flatly, "Start with the woman." A week later, Elaine received a letter with an official government seal. It claimed the Porter Project was under investigation for misuse of charitable funds. It accused her of illegally receiving gifts. There were claims she was profiting from fame. Words like fraud and abuse were stamped across the page. Her hands trembled as she read it. Tears filled her eyes. "What did I do wrong?" she whispered. Keanu arrived 10 minutes later. She showed him the letter in silence. He read it carefully, his jaw tightening. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said. "But why would someone do this?" she asked. "Because when good things grow, people who profit from pain get scared." He made a call to a lawyer he trusted, a woman named Anjali Mehta, who had fought powerful corporations before. "We'll fight this." Anjali promised. "They want to scare you into backing down. We won't let that happen." But the attacks kept coming. Online articles appeared with twisted headlines. Elaine Porter's kindness empire, how much is she really making? Keanu Reeves and his secret network, feel-good story or financial scam. The comments were brutal. Strangers accused Elaine of faking everything. They called her a puppet. They said Keanu was using her to rebuild his image. The worst part wasn't the lies, it was the doubt. Elaine started waking up in the middle of the night, her heart pounding. Maybe I should stop," she said one night, her voice breaking. "Maybe it's too much." Keanu sat beside her. He didn't argue. He just said quietly, "If you stop because you're tired, I'll understand. But if you stop because you're afraid, then they win." Elaine looked into his eyes, and slowly, she nodded. "Then we fight," she said. Anjali began building a legal case. She exposed the connection between Victor Harlan's company and the sudden attacks. They found proof emails, hired trolls, even paid articles designed to destroy Elaine's reputation. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. People started standing up for Elaine. The same volunteers, seniors, and students who had been inspired by the Porter Project began recording videos, posting messages, writing letters. An elderly veteran in Florida said, "Because of the Porter Project, I'm not alone anymore. Don't take that from me." A group of kids in South Africa sang a song they wrote called "You Are Seen" and dedicated it to Elaine. One teenage girl said, "I used to ignore the old lady who lived next door. Now I visit her every Saturday. Mrs. Porter taught me to care." The wave became unstoppable. Media outlets that had once questioned Elaine now defended her. Journalists dug into Victor Harlan's business practices. They uncovered overcharging, neglect in his nursing homes, and silencing of whistleblowers. Suddenly, the world saw who was really behind the attacks, and the public turned. A month later, Elaine sat in front of a judge during a televised hearing. Keanu sat quietly in the audience, hands folded. The courtroom was packed. Elaine wore a simple dress and held her knitting in her lap, calm but strong. The judge reviewed the evidence. He spoke slowly and clearly. "Mrs. Porter, based on the testimony, records, and public support, it is clear this investigation was not based on legal merit, but on an attempt to undermine a movement of compassion. I hereby dismiss all claims. You are free to continue your work." And on a personal note, the judge added, "Thank you for reminding us what kindness can do." Applause broke out. Elaine smiled, not because she had won but because the movement could live on. Keanu helped her to her feet, and she looked up at him with moist eyes. "We didn't break," she whispered. "No," he said. "We built something that can't be broken." That night, they returned home. As the sun set, Elaine and Keanu stood by the window, sipping tea. The Porter Project was now stronger than ever, backed by real structure, protected by real people, and guided by real hearts. Elaine leaned her head gently against Keanu's shoulder. "I used to think I was too old to make a difference," she said softly. He smiled. "But you made the world pause," she chuckled. "Maybe just long enough to remember what matters." But little did they know a message was coming from someone unexpected, someone who had seen their story and wanted to offer them a stage unlike anything they'd ever imagined. The stage of the world. A week after the courtroom victory, Elaine Porter returned to her quiet apartment. The crowd had faded. The camera crews had gone. The phone calls slowed down. But the heart of the Porter Project still beat steadily. Volunteers continued their work. Kindness kept spreading. And Elaine, she just wanted to sit with her cat, sip her tea, and finish the scarf she'd started knitting for a boy in Argentina who'd written her a letter filled with hope. Then, on a rainy Monday morning, a letter arrived. This one wasn't typed. It was written on thick parchment in beautiful cursive. Elaine opened it slowly, curious. It was from the Secretary of the United Nations. "Dear Mrs. Elaine Porter, your story has moved hearts not just in your neighborhood or your country but across the globe. Your message of kindness, dignity, and human connection has reached our office, and we are honored to invite you to speak at the upcoming United Nations Human Dignity Summit in Geneva. We believe the world needs to hear your voice, not as a politician, not as a celebrity, but as a reminder of the power of one simple act. We also welcome Mr. Keanu Reeves to attend as your guest. With gratitude and admiration, Elena Murakami, Chair, Human Dignity Summit, United Nations." Lane sat in stunned silence. Keanu, who had stopped by to bring cinnamon rolls, found her holding the letter with both hands, her mouth slightly open. "Everything all right?" he asked. She looked up at him. "They want me to speak," she said. "Who?" "The world," she whispered. 2 weeks later, Elaine stood backstage in a vast auditorium in Geneva, Switzerland. Flags from every nation waved softly above the stage. Leaders, diplomats, youth activists, and world visionaries sat in rows, waiting. She wore a blue dress, the same color as the scarf she had worn upon for the boy in Argentina. Keanu stood beside her, dressed simply, his hand resting on her shoulder. "You don't have to be perfect," he said. "Just be you." Elaine nodded slowly. "That's the only thing I know how to be." When her name was called, the applause began before she even reached the podium. She walked slowly, gracefully, each step firm. She looked out into the sea of faces, some young, some old, all listening. Then, she began. "My name is Elaine Porter. I'm 84 years old. I've never been to a place like this. I've never spoken in front of cameras. I didn't grow up thinking I would change the world. I just wanted to be useful, to be seen." She paused. The room was completely silent. "One day, I dropped my groceries. No one stopped. I thought I would walk home hungry again. But then, someone saw me. He didn't just pick up my apples. He picked up my spirit." Keanu watched her from the side of the stage. His eyes were full. "That one moment grew into something none of us planned. We didn't make a project. We just followed the heart. People joined us, not because we asked, but because they remembered." Remembered what? Someone would ask later, and she would answer that we belong to each other. The audience rose to its feet. Applause thundered across the room. Leaders wept. Children stood on chairs to see her more clearly. And in that moment, the world didn't see an old woman from Los Angeles. They saw a light. A reminder. A reason. After the speech, interviews flooded in, invitations from schools, hospitals, small towns, big cities. But Elaine chose only a few. She didn't want fame. She wanted impact. She and Keanu returned home quietly. They spent the next months building something lasting. Not just food deliveries or friendly visits, but a system of care. The Porter Project grew into a global foundation. They created kindness kits, small boxes with essentials, handwritten notes, and local emergency numbers. They helped launch kindness classrooms in schools where kids learned empathy alongside math and science. They funded community vans to deliver meals and medicine To those forgotten by the world. And through it all, Elaine never stopped knitting. Every scarf she made was sent somewhere that needed warmth. Her hands worked slowly. Lovingly. As if she could thread hope into every stitch. 2 years later, Elaine passed away quietly in her sleep. She was holding a letter from a little girl in Norway who had just started her own version of the Porter Project at her school. Keanu found her the next morning. He sat beside her for hours. He didn't speak. He just held her hand. Then, later that evening, he walked outside into the cool evening breeze and whispered to the sky, "Thank you." At her memorial, people came from every continent. A boy from Japan read a poem he wrote about her. A nurse from Peru told a story about how a Porter volunteer saved her mother's life. The boy from Argentina, now a young man, flew into place. The blue scarf she sent him on her casket. And Keanu spoke last. She didn't want to be remembered. He said softly, she wanted the work to be remembered. The feeling of being seen, being helped, being loved. If you want to honor her, help someone who feels invisible today. And so they did. Not just that day. But every day after. Years later, a statue was placed in the center of a park in downtown Los Angeles. It wasn't grand. Just a bench with a bronze figure of an elderly woman sitting peacefully, her hand outstretched. The plaque read, "Sit beside me. Let's be kind." Elaine Porter beside it. A small tree grew underneath. In quiet words, carved into the stone, "This all began when someone stopped